me dijo Marlene. Marlene just told me that, reminded me that I had not introduced myself to you guys. So I will introduce myself. My name is Jimmy Martin. Well, I've been Seventh-day Adventist my whole life. Yo he sido adventista toda mi vida. I grew up in the church, and I think my first encounter when I started taking kind of charge of my relationship with God was when I was 5 years old. La primera vez yo crecí en la iglesia y la primera vez que tomé cargo con mi relación con Dios fue cuando tenía unos 5 años. And so, you know, I've just kept that in. I never left the church. Like, there's some people that have stories about leaving the church. That never happened to me. I mean, I did go through some rough patches, but to me, like, God was the most important thing. And to me, it was like, maybe you may consider this an unorthodox relationship, but it's like I didn't leave the church, but I did have my rough patches. Mi relación con Dios, nunca me salí de la iglesia, como hay personas que tienen ese tipo de historia. Pero mi mentalidad era que en todo lo que pasara, que yo iba a estar aferrado de la mano de Dios. Y yo, aunque a veces tenía esa mentalidad de rebeldía, al mismo tiempo le decía a Dios, I know I'm doing something, sé que estoy haciendo algo mal, pero quiero estar contigo. I know I'm doing something wrong, but I want to be with you. Entonces, esa fue mi historia. No quiero meterme mucho en el testimonio. I don't want to get too much into the testimony because it can be a very long story. So I just want to make it brief. But ever since I was young, I heard about the prophets. I read the stories in the Bible. I always admired them and the relationship that they had with God, and how they were with God through the ups and downs. And I was like trying to follow that example, in my life. Because there was like Jonah when he tried to run away, right? And there was Aaron, and Aaron was Moses' helper, but he did his share of messes as well. And I noticed that these people, they mess up in front of God. Even Solomon, they mess up in front of God. And there comes a point in which they come back to Him. And to me, it was like having that genuine relationship with God, where you could tell Him everything, where you could share everything with Him. And I think that as long as you have that pure-hearted relationship, that He will guide you. He will hold your hand and guide you. If God understands you, if God understands your heart, and you're doing everything you can to understand Him, He'll show you the way. Anyways, so just background. I went to school in Whitman College. In Whitman College for my undergrad. If you don't know where Whitman College is in Walla Walla. Walla Walla City. It's a neighboring school to Walla Walla University, so we hang out with each other. I didn't know about Walla Walla University until I got to Whitman College. My friends were telling me, "Oh, you're a Seventh-day Adventist?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they were like, "Oh, did you know that there's a Seventh-day Adventist school over here around the corner?" I was like, "Really? I didn't know that." So we used to hang out with each other, and there was the Christian group in Whitman College that I joined with them. And I did my undergrad in philosophy. No sé si estoy dando la historia de cómo fui al colegio a Whitman College, que está en Washington. Creo que eso se los dije en el martes. Entonces estudié filosofía en Whitman College, and I did that for 4 years because in my relationship with God, I've always had like a deep relationship with Him. Like, I always talked about things, and I talk about everything. And as I talk about everything, like these questions come up and these doubts come up. And I always share these doubts with God to see what kind of answers He has for me. And so it involved a lot of reading the Bible, but it also involved a lot of introspection, a lot of thinking, and thinking in light of the divine, you know. And so I always had that mind of like deep thinking mind about like answering the hard questions in life, like what is the meaning of life and where does evil come from? How is one good, or what is good? What does it mean to be good? And so that's why I studied philosophy. And then after that, and my passion, you know, like ever since I was 13, when I was 13, I was considering like what do I want to do for my life? Like what kind of job what type of career, what kind of job do I want to have? And I noticed that it didn't matter what I thought about, you know, whether I wanted to be a rock star or a doctor or maybe an astronaut or a construction worker or some sort of engineer or an inventor. I don't know. I thought about a lot of stuff. And I thought about it, and none of it seemed to have any satisfaction. It didn't seem to give me any fulfillment. And the reason why that was is, if you've read Ecclesiastes, you'll understand the attitude or the kind of mentality that I had at that time, which is there's nothing new under the sun, and everything that has happened, or everything that you think you want to make happen has already happened, and everything that you want to make happen, eventually it will be history. It will be so far down the line that it won't really have any effect on the people in the future. Nobody will remember you. All your friends, your whole generation will die with you and pass away. And even if some, you know, if you did something great, your name might end up in some page, maybe 2 pages in a history book, in a high school history book. Other than that, it's like you cannot really have any effect. And even then, it happens that the world dies away. There's nothing left. And so with that mentality, I started wondering, what can I do? I want to do something that the effects will transcend the limits of time, the limits of the destruction of this world. And I thought about that. It's like, well, salvation. You know, the doctor can heal you for a while. It can heal you. It can heal your body, and it can make you live longer. But eventually you're going to die of old age because of sin. So you can save somebody's body, and eventually we'll all end up in the same place. But if you save somebody's soul, that's an effect that you have on somebody for all eternity. And to me, that was the only thing that mattered. That was the only thing that I saw that mattered. The most important thing in this life, the only goal that we should have, is to get out of here alive, to make it out alive. Quiero traducir eso. Cuando yo tenía unos 13 años, estaba pensando en lo que quería hacer con mi vida. Si quería ser alguien famoso, si quería escribir un libro, o hacer películas, o astronauta, lo que sea. O un doctor, porque mi mamá siempre quería que fuera un doctor. Pero pensaba en todo eso, y si han leído Eclesiastés, entenderían mi mentalidad en ese momento. Es que no hay nada nuevo bajo el sol, y que no importa lo que hagas, siempre va a tener un fin. Todos van a morir. Los que te recuerdan, tus amigos que te recuerdan, ellos van a morir contigo. Y ya en 200 años, las únicas personas que, si eres tan famoso, lo único que vas a tener, que te van a recordar, van a ser unas 2 páginas en un libro de historia. Y aún así, aunque te recuerden por un largo tiempo, después de que se destruya el mundo, no va a quedar nada. ningún legado, ninguna memoria de que tú exististe. Entonces me puse a pensar, ¿qué puedo hacer que tenga un efecto que trascenda la destrucción de este mundo, que trascenda los efectos del tiempo? Y es la salvación. La salvación es lo único que tiene importancia en la eternidad. Entonces me puse a pensar en eso, y un doctor te puede curar en este momento y te puede dar una larga vida, pero en el final vamos a acabar en el mismo lugar, en la tumba, en el cementerio. Y todo lo que hagas, no importa cuánto ayudes a la persona, siempre van a acabar en el mismo lugar. Pero si salvas el alma de una persona, eso tiene un efecto para la eternidad, hasta la eternidad. Y si salvas a la persona, eso es lo único que importa en esta vida. Todo lo demás que hagamos se va a destruir. Lo único que en verdad importa es que nos salgamos de este mundo vivos. So that was when I was 13 years old. So I always had that in mind, that I wanted to do something with ministry, that I wanted to do God's work. And so I went into philosophy because that's what came naturally to me. That was my passion. But with the idea that I wanted to be a pastor. I got my teaching credential in Cal State San Bernardino, and I'm a good teacher. I consider myself a really good teacher because I can relate to the minds of the student, of the person that's trying to learn, and also get along very well with the youth. I have I behave like a 16-year-old, like a 13-year-old. So I get along. And if you know me in my church, sometimes I do get in trouble just as the little kids do with the elders and the people there. Like, Jimmy, you shouldn't be showing that example to them. So I'm a good teacher, but I mean, the only reason why I got the teaching credential was because I had some extra financial aid. I like teaching, but I don't think that's my calling. My calling was always ministry, and so after I got the teaching credential, I went into a master's in divinity in La Sierra University. And so I got the master's in divinity, and I think the last class I took was 2 years ago, and that involved doing archaeology in Jordan, so that was really fun. And getting my master's in divinity in La Sierra University was actually like a turning point in my life. And I'll continue from there after I translate. Entonces agarré mi licenciatura en filosofía, y después de eso agarré mi credencial de maestro. Y la única razón que la agarré, yo soy buen maestro y me llevo bien con los jóvenes, pero la única razón que agarré la credencial de maestro es porque tenía ayuda financiera del gobierno extra, para un año extra. Entonces, como ya había agarrado mi licenciatura, nomás agarré mi credencial de maestro. Y después de eso, mi pasión, mi llamado, siempre sentí que era el ministerio, el trabajo, para hacer el trabajo de Dios. Entonces, después de eso, fui a la Universidad de la Sierra y agarré mi maestría de divinidad. And I preach in churches here and there. But before I got my teaching credential, I came to a point in my life in which I was kind of doubting, I was kind of questioning whether I should stay in the church or not. Because in my relationship with God and how I studied the Bible, it seemed like I was straying away. In my beliefs, I was straying away from what the church believed. The way that I was raised is that I had my own relationship with God, but I couldn't really talk to anybody about it. Because my ideas were like so out of, I don't know, so abstract that I couldn't really relate to others in that sense. And so, but when I got to La Sierra, I found that community. And you know, La Sierra gets a lot of flack because because they're too liberal, because it's Southern California, I guess, and they're too liberal and they have these liberal ideas. And like, I think a lot of it is hype, but there's some mention that they don't want to consider it a Seventh-day Adventist university anymore either, because of how liberal it is. But to me, I think going to La Sierra University was something that I really needed, because that's where I met people that thought like I did. That, and I'm not talking about how liberal they are. Like, I don't really adhere to the liberal belief system, or the liberal ideas that are being propagated, but more like how one thinks deeply about Scripture, how one thinks deeply about the attributes of God, and how when they have a doubt, they face it instead of just trying to shoo it away, instead of trying to ignore it. But they face it and they wrestle with the doubts. And when they read the Bible and they don't understand something, they wrestle with it and they try to figure it out. And they take their doubts and they don't try to push them away, but they take their doubt to God and they say, here's my doubt. Help me work with it. What do I do with it? And I found that community in La Sierra University, and I realized that, there's more to it. There's more to Seventh-day Adventism than, just reading and believing everything that you read about, whether it's Ellen White or in the Bible. But there's like figuring out, there's that relationship that you have with God, in which there's back and forth, there's arguments, in which you're trying to really understand what God is trying to say, what God is trying to communicate with you. And that was really important to me, because throughout my life it was more like, here's what it says, here's what we believe it says, just take it as it is. And to me it was like, well, sometimes it doesn't make sense to me, I have to understand it on a deeper level. And one of my professors mentioned the idea of present truth, and how God keeps revealing, depending on the stage that you're in your spirituality, and depending on where the church is, God keeps revealing more and more to you and for others as well. And hearing about that, and hearing how Ellen White's background, because I hadn't read any books on Ellen White, but just reading her letters and really reading her letters and reading other stuff about how she thought, it made me realize that, I should be proud to be Seventh-day Adventist, because just as sometimes I feel like I don't fit in with the religion of the time. That's how Ellen White was in her time. She was a reformer. Amen. And she said, there's this truth that we have, but there's more to it. There's more that we have to figure out. And God is trying to tell us something. And we have to keep learning. And we will keep learning, because that's what God does to us. That's in our relationship with God. If we're not growing in our relationship with God, there's something wrong with us. And my professor said, if all you believe, if the totality of your beliefs in Christianity is just what the church tells you, and that just means you need a Jesus moment. You need to spend some time with Jesus, because, there's more to it than that. There's more to it than what you hear in church. And it's up to you to study yourself. To study yourself and to discuss it with others, to discuss it with those people around you, because that's what Ellen White did in her time. Entonces, para mí, yendo a la Universidad de la Sierra era un punto grande para mí, porque en ese tiempo, antes de ir a la Sierra, yo estaba dudando si quedarme en la iglesia o no, porque mientras estaba creciendo tenía todos estos argumentos, tenía todas estas dudas, y yo tenía mi relación con Dios, pero no me podía conectar con las otras personas de la iglesia, porque creciendo siempre tenía la idea de que esto dice la Biblia, esto dice Elena, acéptalo. Y si tienes dudas, más, hazlas a un lado. Y esa, mi forma de ser no era así. Mi forma de ser era si tengo una duda, la quiero analizar, la quiero estudiar y llevársela a Dios para que me ayude a luchar con eso. Y cuando fui a la sierra, conocí a personas así, conocí a los profesores que piensan así. La Universidad de la Sierra siempre dicen malas cosas de ellos porque dicen que son muy liberales. Pero para mí era muy importante llegar ahí, porque al lado de que sean liberales, no me importa mucho de las ideales liberales. Pero lo que me importaba es cómo ellos estudiaban, cómo ellos tomaban sus dudas y las estudiaban de una forma más profunda. Entonces pude encontrar a personas que pensaban, no que pensaban lo mismo, pero que pensaban de la misma manera. So it's not that they believe the same thing that I did, it's that they went about figuring out their beliefs the same. Entonces así, esa forma de pensar, creo que es muy importante porque si todo lo que crees es nada más lo que oyes en la iglesia, eso nada más significa que necesitas una mejor relación con Dios, porque Dios revela, Dios sigue revelando y Dios te sigue enseñando y Dios sigue reformando a la iglesia, depende de dónde estés, es la verdad presente. Así como Elena White en su tiempo, ella sentía que la iglesia necesitaba una reforma, así también hoy en día. Todos tenemos que buscar esa revelación que Dios nos da para poder reformar, para poder seguir, para poder tomar el siguiente paso. So I finished my Master's in Divinity 2 years ago, 2016. And ever since I've been working on my personal project, which is a practicality project. I won't go too much into that because I've already taken enough time with the testimony. But yeah, that's what I've been working on. And I've been putting all my energy into that. And I've been kind of sustaining myself financially with a substitute job. So I'm a substitute teacher, and I use that, but I need as much time as I can for my project, so that's why I like that job, because it's very convenient for me. And yeah, that's my story. Entonces, lo que estoy haciendo hoy en día es que me estoy enfocando toda mi energía en mi proyecto personal, y que no voy a decir mucho de eso, porque ya tomé mucho tiempo, pero lo que estoy haciendo hoy en día es que soy maestro sustituto, y de ahí es donde agarro dinero para cuidarme yo solo, y es muy conveniente tener ese trabajo, porque si quieres trabajar, trabajas, y si no, pues no trabajas, y no te dice nada, pero es muy conveniente porque mientras estoy haciendo mi proyecto personal necesito todo el tiempo que puedo usar. Entonces eso es lo que estoy haciendo. Yeah, so that's my testimony for now. Of course there's a lot more to it. There's a lot of ways in which God works in our lives, but that's kind of like what's on the surface.